Look, I need to get this off my chest because, honestly, I'm still processing how everything went so wrong. I'm Kendra, I'm 36, and my whole life just exploded because apparently being honest with your husband is somehow a crime now. Cole and I have been together since we were teenagers. We're talking high school sweethearts, the whole fairy tale thing. Married for over 10 years, and I thought we had this rock-solid relationship. I mean, we did have a solid relationship. I was always the girl other women envied, you know? The one with the devoted husband who still looked at me like I hung the moon. And honestly, I deserved that attention because I've always taken care of myself. Always made sure I was the kind of wife any man would be lucky to have. I work in an office, handling client accounts, nothing too exciting, while Cole does something with supply chain management. We've got our routine down, our little life all mapped out. But here's the thing that maybe I should have mentioned earlier. I've always been the type of woman who gets noticed. Not to sound conceited, but men have always been drawn to me. Even when I was engaged, even after I got married, guys would find excuses to talk to me, ask me out for coffee, you know how it is. And honestly, it felt good. It's not like I was going to do anything about it, but knowing that I still had that effect on people, that felt amazing. Cole never really noticed. Or if he did, he never said anything. He trusted me completely, which was sweet, but also kind of naive if you ask me. Like, come on, your wife is attractive and other men notice. That's just reality. But Cole was always so focused on work and his hobbies that he didn't really pay attention to the day-to-day stuff. Not in a bad way, just in that typical guy way where they don't notice the little things. I kept these interactions to myself because what was the point of making Cole worry over nothing? If some guy at the grocery store hit on me, or if a coworker made comments, why would I stress Cole out about it? I handled it. I stayed loyal. End of story. Between us, I actually liked having these little secrets. Not because I wanted to cheat or anything crazy like that, but because it made me feel like I had this whole other life that was just mine. Our friend group has always been pretty tight-knit. Most of the couples we hang out with have been together forever too, so there's this comfort level where we all just assume everyone's happy and settled. The wives in our group are fine, I guess, but honestly, some of them have really let themselves go since having kids. I mean, I get it. Life gets busy, but you still have to make an effort, right? I've always made sure to stay in shape, dress well, keep Cole interested. Maybe that's why their husbands sometimes pay more attention to me than they should, but that's not my fault. Cole has this group of guy friends from college that he stayed close with over the years. They do their weekly hangouts, golf trips, all that typical stuff. I've always been cool with it because I'm not one of those wives who gets jealous of her husband having friends. The thing about Cole is that he's always been this steady, reliable type. Not the most exciting guy in the world, but dependable. He pays the bills on time, remembers anniversaries, fixes things around the house. Sometimes I wondered what it would be like to be with someone more spontaneous, more passionate, but then I'd remind myself that stability is rare. Looking back now, I think maybe I took Cole's trust for granted. He never questioned where I was going or who I was talking to. He never checked my phone or acted suspicious. He just believed that I was exactly who I said I was, which I was, but also he had no idea about all the other stuff happening around the edges of our life. I justified keeping these things to myself because, honestly, what good would it do to tell Cole? He'd either get paranoid and start monitoring everything I did, or he'd confront these guys and create drama where there didn't need to be any. But then about a year ago, something happened that made me reconsider this approach. I found out through mutual friends that Dylan, this guy who used to work at my old job, had started working somewhere that Cole might run into him. Dylan was the guy who had made a serious play for me right before Cole and I got married. And I realized that if Cole somehow met him and Dylan mentioned anything about our history, it would look really bad that I'd never told Cole about it. So I decided to come clean about Dylan, thinking it would be better coming from me than having Cole find out some other way. I framed it as me feeling guilty about keeping this secret and wanting to clear my conscience. Cole took it pretty well, actually. He was a little bothered by it, but mostly he seemed proud that I had turned Dylan down and stayed loyal to him. He asked if there were any other incidents like that, and I told him no, because honestly, what he was really asking was if there were any other serious threats to our relationship, and there weren't. That conversation actually made me feel better about my decision-making over the years. Cole appreciated my honesty. He didn't freak out or get jealous. And we moved on. It reinforced my belief that I had been right to handle these situations on my own, and only bring them to Cole's attention if absolutely necessary. Fast forward to a few weeks ago, and I'm pregnant with our first kid. I know, took us long enough, right? But we were finally ready, and honestly, I was excited about this new chapter. The pregnancy has been making me super emotional though. Like crying at commercials, emotional. My hormones are all over the place, and I've been feeling guilty about the weirdest things. It started with me being extra affectionate with Cole. Like, more than usual. I was bringing him coffee in bed, giving him random hugs, telling him how much I loved him out of nowhere. And Cole noticed. Because he's not stupid. He kept asking if everything was okay, if there was something I wanted to talk about. At first I told him it was just pregnancy hormones making me sentimental, which was partly true. But the real reason I was being clingy was because I couldn't stop thinking about Vance. Vance is one of Cole's oldest friends, and about a year before Cole and I got married, he had made a move on me. And by made a move, I mean he full-on told me he thought I was making a mistake marrying Cole, and that he had feelings for me. This was not some innocent flirtation. This was his best friend's groomsman, trying to break us up weeks before our wedding. I had never told Cole about this, obviously. How could I? Vance was going to be standing up there at our wedding. They had this whole friend group, they did trips together. Cole considered Vance one of his closest friends. If I had told Cole what Vance said, it would have ruined everything. So I handled it myself, told Vance to never bring it up again, and pretended it never happened. For years, this worked fine. But now, with pregnancy brain and all these emotions, I kept thinking about how Cole had specifically asked me if there were any other incidents after I told him about Dylan. And I had lied. I had looked my husband in the face and lied to him. The more I thought about it, the more anxious I got. What if Vance ever got drunk and said something? What if Cole found out I had kept this secret for over 10 years? But also, and I'm being completely honest here, part of me was still kind of flattered by what Vance had said back then. I mean, here was this attractive, successful guy telling me I was too good for my fiancé, that I could do better. It was wrong and inappropriate, but it was also kind of thrilling to know that I had that effect on him. I never would have acted on it, obviously. I loved Cole, and I wanted to marry him. But knowing that his friend was jealous of what Cole had, that felt good. Cole started getting worried about my weird behavior. I was being too affectionate, then I'd get snappy over nothing, then I'd get emotional and teary-eyed. He kept asking what was wrong, and I kept saying it was just the pregnancy, but I could tell he wasn't buying it completely. Finally, this past weekend, I couldn't take it anymore. It was Father's Day weekend, and I was trying to make it special for Cole since it would be his last Father's Day before actually becoming a father. But I was so distracted by this guilt that I couldn't even enjoy it. That's when I realized I had to tell him. Not because I thought it was the right thing to do, necessarily, but because keeping it secret was starting to affect our relationship in the present. So I decided to frame it as pregnancy hormones, making me overly guilty about past situations. I told him I had been feeling bad about the Dylan thing again, and that got him listening. Then I said there was actually one other incident that I had never mentioned because it involved someone closer to us. When I finally said Vance's name, I watched Cole's entire body language change. He went completely still, and I could practically see him processing what I was telling him. I tried to explain it as gently as possible. How Vance had approached me at that party about a year before our wedding. How he told me he had feelings for me and thought I was making a mistake with Cole. How I immediately shut him down and told him never to bring it up again. But Cole wasn't hearing the part about how I handled it appropriately. He was stuck on the fact that his groomsman, one of his oldest friends, had tried to steal his fiancée, and I had never told him. And worse, that when he specifically asked me if there were other incidents after the Dylan confession, I had lied to his face. I tried to explain my reasoning. I told him I didn't want to ruin his friendship or cause drama right before our wedding. I pointed out that telling him would have only caused pain and problems without any benefit, since nothing had happened between Vance and me. But Cole was getting more and more upset as I talked. He kept saying things like, 10 years, Kendra. You kept this from me for 10 years. And I've been hanging out with this guy, going on trips with him, considering him one of my closest friends, and he tried to break us up. Then he said something that really ticked me off. He said, "What else aren't you telling me? If you could keep this secret for 10 years, what other secrets are you keeping?" And I got defensive because honestly, that felt like an attack. I had just been vulnerable and honest with him about something difficult, and instead of appreciating that I was coming clean, he was acting like I was some kind of serial liar. I told him he was being dramatic and that there was nothing else to tell. I reminded him that I had been completely faithful to him, that I had turned down Vance and every other guy who had ever hit on me over the years. I pointed out that most wives probably wouldn't have even told him about Vance at all, so he should be grateful that I was being honest now, instead of attacking me for the timing. But Cole wasn't having it. He kept focusing on the lie, on the fact that I had looked him in the eye and told him there were no other incidents when he asked. The conversation got heated pretty quickly. Cole started asking detailed questions about exactly what Vance had said and when and where it happened. It felt like an interrogation, and I did not appreciate being treated like I was on trial for protecting our marriage. I started crying, which wasn't entirely fake because the pregnancy hormones were making everything feel more intense. But I also knew that Cole hates when I cry, and usually backs down when I get emotional. But this time, it didn't work. He just handed me tissues and kept asking questions. That's when I realized this was going to be a bigger problem than I had anticipated. The next few days were absolutely awful. Cole was distant and cold, barely talking to me except when absolutely necessary. He was clearly doing his own investigation, probably trying to figure out what else I might be hiding. He started asking me random questions about other guys in our friend group, about coworkers from my previous jobs, about basically every man I had ever mentioned in passing over the years. What really bothered me was how he was making this all about him. Like, yes, Vance had betrayed his friendship, and yes, I had kept it secret. But at the end of the day, I was the one who had to deal with an inappropriate advance from his friend. I was the one who had to handle that awkward situation and figure out how to navigate it without ruining everyone's relationships. I was the one who had been put in an impossible position, and somehow, I was the villain for making the best decision I could under the circumstances. The worst part was when he started questioning our entire relationship history. He asked if there were other times I had made unilateral decisions about what he should know. He brought up the Dylan situation again and said maybe there was more to that story too. I got so frustrated that I started pointing out all the ways I had been a good wife to him over the years. I reminded him that I had always been supportive of his career, that I had moved cities for his job opportunities, that I had been patient with his weird hobbies. I had been the perfect wife, and this was how he was repaying me. But Cole said none of that mattered if our marriage was built on me filtering information and making decisions about what he was allowed to know. He said trust was the foundation of everything, and if he couldn't trust me to be honest about big things, how could he trust me about anything? Which was completely unfair because I had been honest about everything that actually mattered. Things started getting really bad when Cole decided he needed to confront Vance directly. I begged him not to do it because I knew it would blow up our entire friend group and create all kinds of unnecessary drama, but he said he needed to hear Vance's side of the story. Of course, Vance completely denied everything. He told Cole that I was making it up, that maybe I had misinterpreted some innocent conversation, that he would never betray his friendship like that. I was furious that Vance was calling me a liar after what he had put me through years ago. I told Cole that this was exactly why I hadn't wanted to bring it up, because it would turn into a he said, she said situation where I would be painted as the dramatic woman making up stories. But Cole said Vance seemed genuinely shocked and confused by the accusation, and maybe I had blown some casual comment out of proportion over the years. That's when I really lost it. I told Cole that if he wanted to believe his lying friend over his pregnant wife, that said everything I needed to know about our marriage. But the damage was done. Cole was now questioning everything: my version of events, Vance's denial, his own judgment about both of us. He started pulling away from our entire friend group because he didn't know who he could trust. Word started getting around that Cole and Vance had some kind of falling out, and people began taking sides without even knowing what happened. I became the focus of a lot of speculation and gossip, which was absolutely mortifying. The other wives in our group kept trying to get information out of me about what had happened. I couldn't tell them the truth without making myself look bad, so I had to be vague and let them draw their own conclusions. But then Cole started talking to people himself, trying to figure out if anyone else knew about Vance's behavior or had noticed anything inappropriate over the years. This meant that our private business was becoming public knowledge, and I was being discussed and analyzed by people who had no right to judge my decisions. I felt completely betrayed by Cole's decision to air our dirty laundry instead of handling this privately, like I had asked. The stress was really getting to me, and I started having some pregnancy complications that required bed rest. My doctor said I needed to avoid stress and conflict, which gave me the perfect reason to demand that Cole drop this whole thing and focus on our family instead of his hurt feelings about some ancient history with his friend. But Cole wouldn't let it go. Even with me on bed rest and the doctor's orders to keep things calm, he kept pushing for more conversations about trust and honesty. He said we couldn't bring a baby into a marriage that was built on secrets and lies, which was completely ridiculous, because every marriage has some secrets. No couple tells each other every single thing that happens in their daily lives. The pregnancy complications got worse, and I ended up in the hospital for a few days for monitoring. I thought this would finally make Cole realize that his obsession with this ancient drama was literally putting our baby at risk, but instead, he used the time to do even more investigating. When I got home, he had called some of our old mutual friends from college to ask if they remembered anything strange about Vance's behavior around me back in the day. I told Cole that his investigation was making me look like either a liar or a cheater, and neither was fair, because I had been completely faithful and I was telling the truth about what Vance had said. But Cole said he needed to understand the full scope of what had been hidden from him before he could figure out how to move forward. That's when I realized that Cole was never going to be satisfied with any explanation I gave him. He had decided that I was untrustworthy, and every piece of information I provided was being filtered through that lens. I started to see that this wasn't really about Vance or the secret I had kept. This was about Cole realizing that he had never really known me at all. He had created this image of me as his perfect, transparent wife, and finding out that I was more complicated than that was destroying his fantasy of our relationship. The irony is that I had been protecting that fantasy all along. I had kept the messy, complicated parts of life away from him so he could continue believing that we had this simple, pure love story. I had handled all the real-world complications myself, so he could go on thinking that marriage was easy and trust was simple. And now, he was punishing me for that protection. By the time our baby was born, Cole had essentially checked out of our marriage emotionally. He was going through the motions of being a supportive partner during the birth and the first few weeks, but I could tell his heart wasn't in it. The final straw came when Cole told me he had consulted with a lawyer about divorce. Not because he had definitely decided to leave, he said, but because he needed to understand his options. That's when I realized that I had married a man who was fundamentally incompatible with who I actually was. Cole wanted a wife who would never make independent decisions about what was best for the relationship. He wanted someone who would defer to him on everything, even when that deference would cause unnecessary pain and chaos. So when Cole finally filed for divorce when our baby was 6 months old, I wasn't even surprised. The divorce was brutal. Cole's lawyer painted me as a deceptive and manipulative person who couldn't be trusted with important decisions. They used my pattern of keeping secrets as evidence that I would likely hide things from the court and from Cole about our child. I lost primary custody of our baby, which was devastating, but also gave me the freedom to rebuild my life without Cole's constant judgment. The worst part was watching Cole move on so quickly after our divorce was final. Within 6 months, he was dating this elementary school teacher who seemed to think he was the most amazing man who ever lived. She was everything I wasn't, completely transparent, emotionally simple, content with a boring suburban life. She and Cole would post pictures of their weekend hiking trips and their cozy movie nights, and everyone would comment about how happy and healthy they looked together. Meanwhile, I was struggling to build a new life as a single mother with a reputation for being untrustworthy. Dating was nearly impossible because word had gotten around about why Cole and I had divorced. The few relationships I tried to start would fizzle out as soon as guys realized I came with serious baggage. Cole's new girlfriend was amazing with our child, which should have made me happy, but actually made me furious. Here was this woman stepping into my life and being praised for all the same things I had done during my marriage, being supportive, being nurturing, being devoted to family. But when I had done those things, they were taken for granted. Within 2 years of our divorce, Cole had gotten promoted at work, bought a bigger house, and was clearly thriving in ways he never had during our marriage. His social media was full of pictures of him looking confident and happy, traveling with his new girlfriend, trying new hobbies, basically living his best life. Meanwhile, I was stuck in a small apartment, working longer hours to make ends meet. The final insult came when Cole and his girlfriend got engaged. They had this elaborate proposal story that got shared all over social media with professional photos and a celebration party that included all of our old mutual friends. People who had known us as a couple for over a decade were celebrating Cole's new relationship like our marriage had never even mattered. Now, 3 years after the divorce, I'm still trying to rebuild my life and my reputation. Cole and his fiancée seem blissfully happy, and everyone talks about what a great couple they are and how well-suited they are for each other. Meanwhile, I'm seen as the bitter ex-wife who couldn't handle Cole's success and happiness. But here's the thing that nobody wants to acknowledge. I was a good wife to Cole for over 10 years. I was loyal and supportive and devoted to our family. I made some judgment calls about information sharing that he disagreed with, but my intentions were always to protect our relationship and avoid unnecessary drama. The fact that Cole couldn't handle the complexities of real adult marriage doesn't make me the villain in this story. Everyone acts like Cole is so much better off without me, but they don't see the whole picture. They don't see how his new girlfriend gets to benefit from all the groundwork I laid in training him to be a better husband. They don't see how she gets to skip all the hard years of building a relationship and jump straight into the easy part where everything is established and comfortable. I refuse to apologize for being more complex and mature than Cole was ready for. I refuse to regret protecting our marriage from drama that would have served no purpose except to satisfy his need for total control over every piece of information in his life. And I refuse to pretend that keeping some things private makes me a bad person when every successful relationship requires some level of discretion and judgment. The truth is, Cole was never grateful for anything I did for him during our marriage. And he's not grateful now for the lessons he learned from our relationship that are helping him with his new girlfriend. He just wants to rewrite history to make himself the victim and me the villain. And apparently everyone is happy to go along with that narrative because it's easier than acknowledging that sometimes good people make decisions that other people don't understand or appreciate. But I know who I am and what I contributed to our relationship, and I'm not going to let Cole's inability to handle a mature adult marriage define me for the rest of my life. The real tragedy is that our child is growing up thinking that Cole's version of events is the truth, and that I'm somehow the one who destroyed our family. But maybe when she's older, she'll understand that relationships are complicated, and that sometimes protecting the people you love means making choices they don't agree with. Until then, I'll keep doing what I've always done, making the best decisions I can with the information I have, protecting the people I love, even when they don't understand or appreciate it, and refusing to let other people's limited understanding of complex situations define my worth or my future. Cole got his perfect little life with his perfect little girlfriend, and I got my freedom from his impossible standards and constant judgment. In the end, maybe we both got what we deserved.